Admiral Kethvar stood before the massive viewing screen of his flagship, watching the stars bend and stretch as his fleet moved through hyperspace. The Vorthak Empire had ruled this sector of the galaxy for 3,000 years, and in all that time, no species had ever challenged their authority. Their military doctrine was perfect, refined through countless generations of warfare, until it became an exact science. The bridge around him hummed with quiet efficiency. His officers moved with precise coordination, their movements calculated. To waste no energy, their decisions based on mathematical certainties that had never failed them. War, to the Vorthak, was not chaos or emotion. It was mathematics applied with overwhelming force. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving the final intelligence reports on the human settlements." The officer's voice carried the same measured tone that all Vorthak used when discussing military matters. Emotion was inefficient, unpredictable, and therefore dangerous in combat situations. Kethvar turned from the viewing screen to examine the data flowing across his command console. The humans were a young species, barely a century into faster-than-light travel. Their technology was primitive by Vorthak standards, their ships crude and inefficient. Most importantly, they had no understanding of proper warfare protocols that governed civilized species throughout the galaxy. The reports showed that humans had established several colonies in what the Vorthak Council considered expansion territory. This was not unusual. Young species often made such mistakes when they first ventured into space. The solution was always the same: a compliance demonstration. Show overwhelming force, accept their surrender, establish tribute arrangements, and integrate them into the Empire as a subject species. It was a process that had worked flawlessly for millennia. "How many ships have they deployed for defense?" Kethvar asked, reviewing the tactical assessments. "Minimal defensive capabilities, Admiral," replied his tactical officer. "Approximately 12 small patrol vessels and several orbital defense platforms around their primary colony. Our analysts estimate they will surrender within the first exchange of fire." Kethvar nodded. The pattern was always the same. New species initially showed defiance when confronted with Vorthak superiority, but reality quickly changed their minds. The mathematics were simple. Resistance led to destruction. Surrender led to integration and protection under the Empire. Every rational species chose survival. The fleet consisted of 40 vessels, each one a masterpiece of Vorthak engineering. Their energy shields could absorb tremendous damage while their precision weapons could disable enemy systems without destroying valuable infrastructure. The goal was never annihilation, but control. Dead subjects paid no tribute and provided no labor. "Admiral, we are approaching the human colony designated New Busan," reported the navigation officer. "Dropping out of hyperspace in 30 standard time units." Kethvar reviewed the compliance demonstration protocol one final time. The fleet would emerge from hyperspace in perfect formation, demonstrating their numerical and technological superiority. They would position themselves at optimal firing range and issue the standard surrender demand. When the humans realized the futility of resistance, they would accept tributary status, and the sector would remain peaceful. The viewing screen flickered as the fleet dropped back into normal space. Before them lay a blue-green world orbited by simple space stations and defensive platforms. The human colony ships were visible in orbit, converted civilian vessels that showed the species' lack of proper military infrastructure. "Begin standard formation," Kethvar ordered. His 40 ships moved into the traditional compliance demonstration pattern, a perfect sphere that surrounded the human positions while maintaining safe firing distance. Every weapon was targeted. Every defensive system was analyzed. Every possible escape route was blocked. "Open communications channel," Kethvar commanded. The ritual of surrender demands was as ancient as the Empire itself, refined through thousands of successful encounters with dozens of species. The communication screen activated, showing a human male wearing what appeared to be a military uniform. His name appeared on the translation system as Commander Lee Minho, apparently the ranking defense coordinator for the colony. The human looked calm, which was unusual. Most species showed fear or panic when confronted with overwhelming Vorthak force. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Vorthak Third Fleet," he began, using the standard formula that had never failed. "Your species has established unauthorized settlements in territory designated for Vorthak expansion. You will immediately cease all military activities, surrender your vessels, and prepare to discuss tribute arrangements. Compliance will ensure your survival and protection under Imperial authority. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your military assets. The human commander listened without interruption, then leaned forward slightly. His response was not what Kethvar expected. Admiral Kethvar, I am Commander Lee Minho of the new Busan Defense Force. We have received and understood your terms. After careful consideration, we decline your offer. We will defend this colony and these people. Prepare for engagement. The communication ended abruptly. Kethvar stared at the blank screen, his tactical officers exchanging confused glances. In 3,000 years of Imperial expansion, no species had ever refused a compliance demonstration. When faced with such overwhelming odds, the mathematics made resistance impossible. Perhaps their translation systems malfunctioned, suggested his communications officer. Should we repeat the surrender demand? Scan their defensive positions again, Kethvar ordered instead. Verify their military capabilities. The scan results confirmed what they already knew. 12 small patrol ships, 24 orbital defense, platforms, and approximately 50 single-pilot fighters. Against 40 Vorthak capital ships, the odds were mathematically impossible. Yet the humans had refused surrender. Admiral, we are detecting increased activity around their defensive installations, reported the tactical officer. Their patrol ships are moving into formation, and their platforms are powering weapons systems. Kethvar considered the situation carefully. Perhaps the humans did not understand the reality of their position. Some young species required a demonstration of Vorthak firepower before accepting the inevitable. It was inefficient, but occasionally necessary. Target their outer defense platforms, he ordered. Minimum power settings. We will show them the futility of resistance without causing unnecessary destruction. The first Vorthak energy beams lanced out across space, striking 3 human orbital platforms with precisely calculated force. The weapons were designed to disable rather than destroy, creating visible damage while leaving the structures salvageable. It was a lesson in overwhelming technological superiority that usually ended conflicts immediately. Instead of the expected surrender transmission, something unprecedented happened. The damaged platforms began moving, their orbital positions shifting in ways that defied Vorthak tactical computers. Rather than maintaining static defensive positions as all civilized species did, the humans were actively maneuvering their installations. Admiral, the human platforms are exhibiting non-standard behavior, reported his tactical officer, confusion evident in his voice. They appear to be deliberately placing themselves in suboptimal defensive positions. More disturbing were the readings, coming from the human patrol ships. Instead of maintaining safe distance and preparing to surrender, they were accelerating toward the Vorthak fleet. Their weapons, primitive by Imperial standards, began firing at extreme range where accuracy should have been impossible. Their targeting systems must be malfunctioning, Kethvar reasoned. No commander would order attacks at such range with those weapons, but the human weapons were finding their targets with surprising accuracy. More puzzling, the humans seemed to be deliberately targeting their own damaged platforms, causing massive explosions that sent debris toward the Vorthak formation. Admiral, recommend we increase distance and reassess, advised his tactical officer. Their behavior does not match any known military doctrine. Kethvar refused to retreat from such inferior forces. The Vorthak had never withdrawn from any engagement in their history. Instead, he ordered his fleet to begin systematic destruction of the human defenses, expecting the display of superior firepower to bring them to their senses. What followed challenged everything the Vorthak understood about warfare. The humans fought with a desperation and unpredictability that their computers could not process. They used their own installations as weapons, deliberately overloading power systems to create explosions. Their patrol ships conducted impossible maneuvers, sacrificing armor and systems to maintain offensive capability. Most shocking of all, when their orbital defenses finally collapsed, the expected surrender transmission never came. Instead, the humans launched their single-pilot fighters in what could only be described as suicide attacks against Vorthak capital ships. The compliance demonstration that should have lasted minutes stretched into hours. When it finally ended, the Vorthak fleet held the battlefield, but at a cost that defied all mathematical predictions. 8 ships destroyed, dozens more damaged, all by an enemy that should have surrendered immediately. The battle for New Busan began exactly as Admiral Kethvar expected. His 40 ships maintained perfect formation at optimal firing distance, their energy weapons locked onto human defensive positions with mathematical precision. The Vorthak combat doctrine, refined over 3,000 years, called for overwhelming displays of force that convinced enemies to surrender before significant damage occurred. Colonel Park Ji-won stood in the command center of Defense Platform 7, watching. The Vorthak fleet arranged itself in the traditional compliance demonstration pattern. Her tactical screens showed energy readings that confirmed what intelligence reports had suggested. The alien ships possessed superior technology, stronger shields, and more powerful weapons than anything humanity had ever built. She activated the colony-wide communication system and spoke in calm, measured tones. All defense units, this is Colonel Park. The aliens have positioned themselves according to standard Imperial doctrine. They expect us to surrender after the first exchange. They expect us to follow their rules. We will not. The first Vorthak energy beams struck Platform 7 with precisely calculated force, designed to disable rather than destroy. Warning lights flashed across Park Ji-won's command center as hull breaches sealed automatically and backup systems engaged. The aliens were showing restraint, expecting surrender. Instead of broadcasting capitulation, Park Ji-won activated systems the Vorthak had not detected during their scans. Platform 7 began moving, its position thrusters firing in sequences that shifted its orbital trajectory. Every human defensive installation started similar maneuvers, abandoning fixed positions that made them easy targets. Platform commanders, implement protocol chaos, Park Ji-won ordered over the tactical network. Make them recalculate everything. Lieutenant Kim Dae-ho, commanding the patrol ship Mokpo, received the order and immediately began what human tactical doctrine called aggressive positioning. Instead of maintaining safe distance like civilized species, he accelerated directly toward the Vorthak formation. His ship's primitive kinetic weapons, dismissed by alien intelligence as ineffective, began firing at extreme range. The Vorthak tactical computers struggled to process human behavior. Their targeting systems were designed to track predictable movement patterns. But the humans were deliberately placing themselves in positions that no rational commander would choose. Defense platforms moved into overlapping fields of fire. Patrol ships accelerated into weapon ranges where they should be easily destroyed. Admiral Kethvar watched his tactical displays with growing confusion as human defensive installations began exhibiting impossible behavior. Platform 12, heavily damaged by Vorthak fire, suddenly accelerated toward Platform 15, deliberately colliding in a massive explosion that sent debris toward his fleet. "Admiral, the humans appear to be destroying their own installations," reported his tactical officer, voice filled with bewilderment. "This behavior serves no logical military purpose, but the debris from the deliberately created explosion was not random." Colonel Park Ji-won had calculated trajectories carefully, turning destroyed infrastructure into kinetic weapons that forced the Vorthak fleet to adjust position. Every movement by the aliens was being analyzed, their formation patterns studied and countered. Commander Baek Hyun-woo aboard the patrol ship, Jeonju demonstrated another aspect of human warfare that the Vorthak had never encountered. When his ship's shields failed under alien fire, instead of withdrawing to safety, he ordered his crew to overload the reactor core. The resulting explosion took out his own ship but damaged 2 Vorthak vessels that had moved too close, expecting easy prey. Tactical analysis indicates the humans are deliberately sacrificing their own forces, Kethvar's tactical officer reported. This contradicts all known military doctrine. No species willingly destroys valuable military assets without strategic benefit. The Vorthak understanding of strategic benefit was clearly different from the human perspective. Sergeant Oh Young-suk, commanding Marine Detachment Alpha aboard Defense Platform 3, received orders that would have horrified any civilized military commander. When the platform's weapons failed and alien boarding pods began approaching, she ordered her Marines to plant explosives throughout the installation. "Set the charges for maximum structural damage," she commanded. "When the aliens board, we take the platform with us." The Vorthak boarding parties, expecting standard surrender procedures, instead found themselves fighting through corridors where humans had deliberately created unstable atmospheric conditions. Oh Young-suk's Marines fought with weapons and tactics. that seemed designed more to cause chaos than achieve victory. They used their own wounded as bait, set traps in areas they were forced to abandon, and detonated sections of their own ship when tactical advantage required it. Dr. Nam Soo-young, the colony's chief engineer, coordinated what she called creative destruction from the main engineering facility. Rather than protecting critical infrastructure, she began systematically overloading power systems throughout the colony. Fusion reactors designed for controlled energy release were deliberately destabilized, creating artificial suns that burned through Vorthak shields. The aliens calculate based on normal operational parameters, she explained to her engineering teams over the communication system. If we operate outside normal parameters, their computers cannot predict our actions. Major Cho Jong-min commanded the colony's ground-based defense batteries, weapons that should have been useless against space-based targets. When orbital platforms began falling from the sky, he ordered his batteries to target the wreckage, adding kinetic energy to debris that was already falling toward the Vorthak fleet positions. The human approach to warfare violated every principle. The Vorthak understood about military efficiency. Captain Hong Min-seok, commanding the patrol ship Ulsan, demonstrated this when his ship was surrounded by 6 Vorthak vessels. Instead of surrendering, he ordered his crew to abandon ship while he remained behind to manually control the vessel's final attack run. 1 ship versus 6 is impossible odds according to their mathematics, Hong Min-seok transmitted to the fleet command. But their mathematics assume I want my ship to survive the engagement. The Ulsan accelerated directly into the Vorthak formation. Its crew safely evacuated while Hong Min-seok steered the ship into a collision course with the alien flagship's escort vessels. The resulting explosion destroyed his ship and heavily damaged 2 Vorthak cruisers, creating the kind of exchange ratio that alien military doctrine said was impossible. Admiral Kethvar found himself facing tactical decisions that his training had never prepared him for. The humans were fighting with total disregard for acceptable losses, treating their own lives and equipment as expendable resources rather than valuable assets to be preserved. Admiral, recommend immediate withdrawal to reassess enemy capabilities, his tactical officer advised. Human behavior does not conform to any known military doctrine in our databases. The suggestion of withdrawal was unthinkable to Kethvar. The Vorthak Empire had never retreated from an engagement with inferior forces. Instead, he ordered his fleet to increase firepower and begin systematic destruction of remaining human positions. Lieutenant General Park Seojin, commanding all colony defensive forces from the underground command center, watched the battle unfold through tactical displays that showed impossible exchange ratios. Humans were trading individual ships and platforms for multiple alien vessels, achieving results that military mathematics said were impossible. All units maintain aggressive posture, he commanded. The aliens expect us to preserve forces for future battles. Show them we consider this the only battle that matters. The final phase of the engagement began when human defensive positions finally collapsed under overwhelming Vorthak firepower. Admiral Kethvar expected the usual surrender transmission, but instead received something that challenged his understanding of warfare itself. Commander Lee Min-ho appeared on the communication screen from what was clearly a damaged command center. Explosions were visible behind him, and his uniform showed signs of combat. Instead of offering surrender, he made a final transmission that left the Vorthak admiral speechless. Admiral Kethvar, you have demonstrated superior technology and numbers. You will win this engagement. However, we want you to understand something important about humanity. We do not fight to win individual battles. We fight to learn how to win the war. The transmission ended, and with it came something no Vorthak commander had ever experienced. Instead of surrender, the remaining human fighters launched what could only be described as a final suicide attack. 50 single-pilot spacecraft, each one piloted by volunteers who had no intention of returning, accelerated toward the Vorthak fleet. Fleet Admiral Lim Jung-ho had volunteered for the final attack mission, leading pilots who understood they were trading their lives for tactical information. Their ships carried sensors and communication equipment rather than heavy weapons, broadcasting detailed scans of Vorthak ship capabilities back to human colonies throughout the sector. Remember, Lim Jung-ho transmitted to his pilots, we are not trying to destroy their fleet. We are trying to understand it. Make every second of scanner data count. 3 months after the destruction of New Busan, Admiral Kethvar stood in the command center of his flagship, studying intelligence reports that challenged everything he understood about military doctrine. The expected pattern following a compliance demonstration was simple. Defeated species accepted tributary status, integrated peacefully into the Empire, and focused on rebuilding under Vorthak protection. The humans had done none of these things. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting an approaching vessel," reported his tactical officer. "Single ship, human configuration, entering our patrol sector at standard approach speed." Kethvar examined the sensor readings with interest. The ship appeared on his tactical displays as a crude, angular vessel bristling with what seemed to be primitive kinetic weapons. Its design showed none of the elegant efficiency that characterized Vorthak engineering, instead displaying the blocky, heavily armored construction that humans seemed to prefer. "Identification?" he asked. "The vessel identifies itself as the UHSF Incheon, commanded by Captain Yoon Sumin," his communications officer replied. "They are requesting permission to approach for what they term diplomatic discussions." The request was unusual but not unprecedented. Defeated species occasionally sent negotiation vessels to discuss tribute arrangements or request reduced territorial restrictions. What was strange was the timing. Most species required years to recover from compliance demonstrations before attempting diplomatic contact. "Deploy standard patrol squadron to escort," Kethvar ordered. 12 vessels should be adequate for a single diplomatic ship. Commander Baek Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Incheon, watching Vorthak ships move into escort formation around his vessel. His tactical displays showed 12 alien cruisers, each one individually superior to his ship in firepower, shielding, and maneuverability. By any rational analysis, the situation was hopeless. "Captain," reported his tactical officer, "Vorthak vessels are taking standard escort positions. They expect us to follow diplomatic protocols and allow boarding for inspection." Captain Yoon Sumin studied the alien formation through her command displays. Intelligence gathered from the New Busan engagement had provided detailed information about Vorthak tactical doctrine, information that had cost hundreds of human lives to obtain. Those deaths would not be wasted. "All stations, prepare for aggressive boarding protocols," she announced over the ship's communication system. "Remember, we are not here to win a traditional engagement. We are here to demonstrate that humans do not follow traditional patterns." Sergeant Oh Young-suk, now commanding the Incheon's Marine Detachment, received the order with grim satisfaction. The Marines under her command were volunteers who understood the nature of their mission. They were not expected to survive, but they were expected to gather intelligence and demonstrate human capabilities to an enemy that still thought in terms of predictable warfare. The Vorthak patrol squadron leader transmitted standard boarding protocols to the Incheon, expecting compliance with established diplomatic procedures. Instead of reducing speed and preparing for inspection, the human ship began exhibiting the same unpredictable behavior that had characterized the New Busan engagement. "Admiral, the human vessel is not following diplomatic approach protocols," Kethvar's tactical officer reported. "They are maintaining combat speed and appear to be targeting our escort formation." The report was clearly incorrect. One ship could not possibly target 12 Vorthak vessels with any hope of success. The mathematics were impossible. The odds, so overwhelming that no rational commander would consider such action. Captain Yoon Sumin proved that humans did not always operate according to rational calculations. "All weapons, target the lead escort vessel," she commanded. "Helm, set collision course. Engineering, prepare for ramming speed." The Incheon accelerated directly toward the Vorthak formation, its primitive kinetic weapons opening fire at ranges where accuracy should have been impossible. But the humans had studied Vorthak ship movement patterns during the New Busan engagement, analyzing how alien vessels maneuvered in formation. Their targeting was not random but based on careful observation of enemy behavior. "The human ship is accelerating toward our formation," reported the Vorthak squadron leader. "Recommend they be disabled before they can damage themselves against our shields." Admiral Kethvar authorized defensive fire, expecting the demonstration of superior firepower to bring the humans to their senses. Vorthak energy weapons struck. The Incheon, with precisely calculated force, designed to disable propulsion without destroying the vessel. Instead of stopping, the human ship continued its approach as armor plates exploded away from its hull. But rather than revealing internal structure, the destroyed armor exposed additional layers underneath. The humans had built their ship like an onion, designed to absorb tremendous damage while maintaining function. Their vessel appears to have multiple armor configurations, the tactical officer reported with growing alarm. They seem to have anticipated our defensive fire and prepared accordingly. Commander Baek Hyun-woo coordinated damage control as Vorthak weapons tore through the Incheon's outer hull layers. His engineering teams worked with efficiency that would have impressed alien observers, rerouting power through backup systems, and maintaining weapon function despite catastrophic damage. Engineering reports 60% hull damage, but all primary systems remain operational, he reported to Captain Yoon Sumin. We can maintain collision course for approximately 8 more minutes. The Vorthak squadron found itself facing a fiadere tactical situation that their training had never covered. The human ship showed no signs of stopping, despite taking damage that should have disabled any rational crew. More disturbing, their analysis indicated the humans had deliberately designed their vessel to absorb exactly the kind of defensive fire that Vorthak protocols called for. Admiral, recommend immediate withdrawal, the squadron leader transmitted. Human vessel appears to be configured for ramming attack. Their behavior suggests they intend mutual destruction. The concept of mutual destruction was so foreign to Vorthak, thinking that Admiral Kethvar initially dismissed the possibility. No species willingly destroyed valuable military assets without clear strategic benefit. The humans must be bluffing, attempting to force negotiations through the threat of suicide. Captain Yoon Sumin demonstrated that humans were not bluffing. The Incheon struck the lead Vorthak escort vessel at full ramming speed, its reinforced hull cutting through alien shields like they were paper. Magnetic clamps, hidden beneath the ship's outer armor, locked the two vessels together while hull-cutting charges created breaches that allowed human marines to pour into the alien ship. Sergeant Oh Young-suk led the boarding action with tactics that horrified the Vorthak crew. Instead of attempting to capture specific areas or follow civilized rules of engagement, her marines moved through the alien ship like a force of nature. They used explosives in confined spaces, deliberately decompressed sections to create tactical advantages, and fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive aggression that the aliens had never encountered. The humans are exhibiting controlled barbarism, reported the Vorthak ship's captain, before his communication was cut short by explosions in his command center. What followed challenged every assumption the Vorthak held about boarding actions. Civilized species conducted ship-to-ship combat according to established protocols that minimized damage to valuable infrastructure. The humans seemed determined to cause maximum chaos regardless of consequences. Major Cho Jong-min, commanding the Incheon's technical specialists, demonstrated human problem-solving by analyzing Vorthak ship systems in real time during the boarding action. Instead of simply fighting for control, his teams were studying alien technology, downloading computer systems and gathering intelligence even while engaged in combat. Their computer systems use quantum encryption that we cannot break immediately, he reported to Captain Yoon Sumin over the tactical communication system. However, we can copy their databases for later analysis. The boarding action continued for 3 hours, with human marines systematically moving through the Vorthak vessel while gathering unprecedented intelligence about alien technology. They fought with weapons that seemed designed more for psychological impact than military efficiency, creating noise and destruction that terrified alien crews. Dr. Nam Soo-young, serving as the mission's technical analyst, coordinated intelligence gathering from the captured alien systems. Her teams worked under combat conditions to analyze Vorthak shield frequencies, weapon systems, and tactical computers, downloading terabytes of information that would revolutionize human understanding of alien capabilities. We are obtaining detailed specifications for their entire technological base, she reported. Ship design, weapon systems, defensive capabilities, everything. The Vorthak crew finally surrendered when the humans demonstrated they were willing to deliberately decompress sections of the ship, including areas containing their own wounded, to achieve tactical objectives. The concept of acceptable losses was so foreign to alien thinking that they could not comprehend human willingness to sacrifice their own people for strategic advantage. Captain Hong Min Seok, the intelligence gathered from the Incheon sacrifice spread through human space like wildfire, transforming what should have been a minor colonial dispute into something the Vorthak Empire had never experienced, a full-scale war against an opponent that refused to follow any recognizable military doctrine. Admiral Kethvar stood before the Vorthak High Command, explaining losses that defied every mathematical model the Empire had developed over 3 millennia of warfare. The holographic display behind him showed tactical analyses that challenged the fundamental assumptions of Vorthak military science. The humans have captured 17 of our supply depots, destroyed 43 patrol vessels, and somehow acquired detailed specifications of our latest defensive technologies, he reported to the assembled command council. Their methods continue to violate all known principles of civilized warfare. Council leader Vorthak studied the data with growing confusion. The reports described tactics that made no sense according to traditional military thinking. Human forces used civilian freighters as weapons, deployed soldiers who seemed to consider their own survival secondary to mission completion, and employed strategies that appeared designed more to cause chaos than achieve conventional victory. Explain their operational patterns, Vorthak demanded. Our analysts cannot identify any coherent strategy in their actions. Admiral Kethvar activated tactical recordings from recent engagements, showing human forces behaving in ways that challenged Vorthak's understanding of warfare itself. In one engagement, Major Cho Jongmin had led a unit that successfully captured a supply depot by hiding inside the wreckage of their own destroyed ships, waiting 3 days without food or water to attack when Vorthak forces attempted salvage operations. They appear to treat their own casualties as tactical resources, Kethvar explained. In this engagement, they deliberately allowed their ships to be destroyed, then used the wreckage as concealment for boarding parties. The recording showed human marines emerging from what the Vorthak had assumed was empty debris, cutting through alien hull plating with tools that should not have survived the destruction of their ships. Cho Jongmin's unit had studied Vorthak salvage procedures, anticipating exactly how alien forces would approach damaged vessels. Dr. Nam Soo-young had analyzed captured Vorthak technology with a creativity that horrified alien engineers. Instead of attempting to reverse engineer superior systems, she deliberately introduced failures and overloads that could destroy human ships while taking alien vessels with them. Her modifications turned technological inferiority into tactical advantage. They call it controlled catastrophe, Kethvar continued, showing technical analyses that made Vorthak engineers uncomfortable. They deliberately destabilize their own systems to create unpredictable effects that our tactical computers cannot anticipate. The recordings showed human ships exploding in patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated to cause maximum damage to nearby Vorthak vessels. Dr. Nam Soo-young's teams had learned to time reactor overloads, coordinate system failures, and use their own destruction as a weapon that alien shields could not defend against. Captain Hong Min-seok of the destroyer Gwangju had demonstrated the ultimate expression of human tactical thinking when his ship was surrounded by an entire Vorthak squadron. Instead of surrendering or attempting to escape, he had deliberately induced a controlled fusion reactor failure that created an artificial star, trapping the alien fleet in a gravity well while broadcasting their position to human reinforcements. The human commander remained aboard his ship to manually control the reactor failure, Kethvar reported. He died to ensure the tactical effectiveness of his weapon. The concept of deliberately sacrificing command personnel for tactical advantage was so foreign to Vorthak, thinking that several council members questioned the accuracy of the reports. No rational species would waste trained officers in such manner, yet the recordings clearly showed human commanders treating their own lives as expendable resources. Fleet Admiral Lim Jung-ho commanded the growing human fleet with strategies that violated every principle of space warfare that the Vorthak had ever encountered. His forces used damaged civilian vessels as decoys, employed disabled ships as improvised weapons, and coordinated attacks that seemed designed more to gather intelligence than achieve military objectives. Their operational goal appears to be learning, rather than territorial conquest, Admiral Kethvar explained to the increasingly disturbed Command Council. Every engagement provides them with new information about our capabilities, which they immediately share with their entire species. The human approach to warfare treated individual battles as experiments in a vast laboratory of military science. Each engagement taught them something new about Vorthak technology, tactics, or psychology, information that was instantly transmitted to human colonies throughout the galaxy and incorporated into improved strategies. Lieutenant General Park Seojin coordinated human ground operations with the same disregard for conventional wisdom that characterized their space battles. His forces had captured 3 Vorthak planets by using tactics that no civilized species would consider. They infiltrated alien cities disguised as refugees, established weapons caches in civilian areas, and conducted operations that deliberately blurred the distinction between military and civilian targets. They embed military units within civilian populations, Kethvar reported. When we respond with standard occupation procedures, they use our own rules of engagement against us. The Vorthak military doctrine called for minimal civilian casualties and preservation of infrastructure in occupied territories. The humans exploited this restraint by operating from areas that alien forces could not attack without violating their own ethical standards. Commander Baek Hyun-woo had pioneered what humans called urban warfare by studying Vorthak psychology and discovering that alien forces became uncomfortable when forced to fight in populated areas. His units deliberately established defensive positions in schools, hospitals, and residential districts, knowing that Vorthak commanders would hesitate to use heavy weapons in such locations. Their strategy appears designed to force us to choose between military effectiveness and civilized behavior, Kethvar continued. They understand our ethical limitations and exploit them as tactical weaknesses. Captain Yoon Sumin, now commanding a fleet of converted civilian vessels, had transformed merchant ships into weapons that challenged every assumption about space combat. Her forces used medical transports packed with explosives, cargo haulers modified to ram enemy vessels, and passenger liners converted into mobile weapon platforms that looked harmless until they opened fire. The psychological impact on Vorthak forces was becoming as significant as the military losses. Alien commanders found themselves unable to predict human behavior, uncertain whether approaching vessels were genuine civilians or disguised military units. The stress of constant vigilance was affecting Vorthak morale in ways that traditional warfare had never achieved. Sergeant Oh Young-suk led boarding actions that demonstrated human creativity in close-quarters combat. Her Marines had learned to exploit Vorthak ship designs using alien engineering principles against their creators. They introduced biological agents that disrupted alien life support systems, employed sound weapons that took advantage of Vorthak hearing sensitivity, and used psychological tactics that left surviving alien crews traumatized. They appear to study our biology and psychology as carefully as our technology, Admiral Kethvar reported. Their weapons are designed specifically to exploit Vorthak physical and mental characteristics. The human approach to warfare was becoming personal, in ways that disturbed the alien command structure. Rather than treating Vorthak forces as abstract military opponents, human units seemed to regard them as subjects for scientific study, learning about alien psychology, biology, and culture to develop more effective methods of combat. Major Cho Jongmin had established what humans called psychological warfare by analyzing Vorthak communication patterns and developing propaganda specifically designed to exploit alien cultural assumptions. His broadcasts were carefully crafted to create doubt and confusion among Vorthak forces, using their own cultural values against them. They have learned to weaponize our own ethics, Kethvar concluded his report. Every aspect of Vorthak civilization becomes a potential tool for human forces to exploit. The Command Council struggled to comprehend reports that challenged their understanding of warfare itself. The humans were not simply fighting a military campaign. They were conducting a comprehensive analysis of Vorthak civilization, learning everything about alien culture, technology, and psychology that could be used to achieve victory. Dr. Nam Soo-young had established research facilities that analyzed captured Vorthak equipment with terrifying efficiency. Her teams were not just reverse engineering alien technology, they were improving it, finding weaknesses in Vorthak designs that the aliens themselves had never recognized. Their scientists work under combat conditions, Admiral Kethvar reported. They conduct research while actively engaged in warfare, treating battles as opportunities for field testing of new technologies. The war between the Vorthak Empire and humanity did not end with a great battle or decisive victory. It ended with a realization that changed the fundamental nature of warfare throughout the galaxy. Admiral Kethvar stood in his command center, not as a conquering general, but as a military leader, forced to acknowledge that 3,000 years of imperial doctrine had become obsolete in the span of 2 years. The final engagement had taken place in the Kepler Nebula, where human forces, under Fleet Admiral Lim Jung-ho, had demonstrated the ultimate evolution of their tactical thinking. Instead of attempting to defeat the Vorthak fleet through conventional means, they had turned the nebula itself into a weapon, using controlled stellar manipulation to create gravitational anomalies that trapped alien ships while allowing human vessels to escape. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet," his communications officer reported. "They are requesting direct communication with you. The request was unprecedented in Vorthak military history. Enemy commanders did not request personal communication during active hostilities unless they were offering surrender. But the humans had never followed standard patterns, and Admiral Kethvar had learned to expect the unexpected. Fleet Admiral Lim Jung-ho appeared on the communication screen, broadcasting from what was clearly the bridge of a human warship. His uniform showed signs of recent combat, but his expression was calm, professional, and surprisingly respectful. Behind him, Kethvar could see human crew members working with the quiet efficiency that had become the hallmark of their species. Military operations. "Admiral Kethvar, I am Fleet Admiral Lim Jung-ho of the Human Defense Force," the human commander began. "I am contacting you to propose terms for ending this conflict." The word terms caught Kethvar's attention. In 3 millennia of Vorthak expansion, defeated enemies had never been in a position to propose terms. They surrendered unconditionally and accepted whatever arrangements the Empire chose to impose. The fact that humans were offering negotiations rather than surrender represented a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. "What terms do you propose?" Kethvar asked, genuinely curious about what the humans considered a reasonable resolution to their conflict. "Mutual recognition of territorial sovereignty and establishment of formal diplomatic relations between our species," Lim Jung-ho replied. "We propose to end hostilities based on current territorial boundaries and develop trade agreements that benefit both civilizations." The proposal was revolutionary. The Vorthak Empire had never negotiated with equals because no species had ever achieved equal status through military action. The humans were not offering surrender or tribute. They were proposing a peace treaty between sovereign powers. Lieutenant General Park Seo-jun joined the communication from the human flagship, representing the ground forces that had revolutionized planetary warfare throughout the sector. His presence emphasized that human terms represented the unified position of their entire military command structure. "We have learned much about Vorthak civilization during this conflict," Park Seo-jun added. "We believe our species have complementary strengths that could benefit both sides through cooperation rather than continued warfare." Admiral Kethvar found himself in an impossible situation. Military doctrine demanded that he reject any terms except unconditional surrender, but the reality of the tactical situation made such demands meaningless. The humans had demonstrated that they could not be defeated through conventional methods, and continued warfare would only result in mutual destruction. "I must consult with the High Command," Kethvar replied, using diplomatic language that acknowledged the legitimacy of human proposals without committing to acceptance. The consultation with the Vorthak leadership took place over secure communications that humans could undoubtedly intercept, but chose not to disrupt. This restraint was itself a demonstration of human tactical evolution. They had learned when to use their capabilities and when to refrain from actions that might escalate conflict unnecessarily. Council leader Vorthak struggled with concepts that challenged the fundamental structure of Vorthak civilization. The Bad Empire had been built on the principle of technological and military superiority over subject species. Recognizing humans as equals would require acknowledging that Vorthak dominance was not absolute or permanent. "The humans have achieved something unprecedented," Admiral Kethvar reported to the assembled council. "They have forced us to respect them through methods that our military doctrine cannot counter. Continuing this war will result in mutual destruction without strategic benefit to either side." Dr. Nam Soo-young had transmitted technical analyses that demonstrated human understanding of Vorthak technology now exceeded that of the aliens themselves. Her research teams had not only reverse-engineered Imperial systems, but had improved them, creating hybrid technologies that combined human innovation with alien efficiency. They offer to share technological advances, Kethvar continued. Their proposals include joint research projects that could benefit both species. The concept of technological exchange between equals was foreign to Vorthak thinking, but the potential benefits were undeniable. Human creativity combined with Vorthak precision could produce innovations that neither species could achieve independently. Commander Baek Hyunwoo had established what humans called military exchange programs, proposing that Vorthak and human officers trained together to develop new tactical doctrines that incorporated the strengths of both approaches to warfare. The proposal acknowledged that each species had valuable contributions to make to military science. They suggest establishing joint training facilities, Admiral Kethvar reported. Their goal appears to be mutual improvement rather than dominance. Captain Yoon Sumin had demonstrated human commitment to peaceful cooperation by voluntarily sharing defensive technologies that could protect Vorthak colonies from other potential threats. Her actions showed that humans viewed former enemies as potential allies rather than permanent opponents. The Vorthak Council faced a decision that would reshape the galaxy. They could continue a war that was becoming increasingly costly and destructive, or they could accept a new reality where their empire was no longer the sole dominant power in their sector of space. Council. Leader Vorthak made the decision that preserved Vorthak civilization while acknowledging the changed nature of galactic politics. We will accept human terms and establish formal diplomatic relations. The peace treaty was signed aboard a neutral space station, with representatives from both species working together to create agreements that neither had ever imagined possible. Major Cho Jong-min served as a human military advisor, helping to establish protocols for joint operations against common threats. Sergeant Oh Young-suk led the first integrated training exercises, where human and Vorthak Marines learned each other's tactical approaches. The cultural exchange was as significant as the military cooperation, with both species discovering that their former enemies possessed capabilities worthy of respect and emulation. Lieutenant Colonel Kim Dae-ho established the first joint human Vorthak military academy, where officers from both species studied warfare from perspectives that neither had previously considered. The curriculum included what became known as human factors, the strategic use of acceptable losses, tactical innovation through desperation, and the psychological advantages of unpredictability. The Academy's success led to broader educational exchanges that transformed both civilizations. Human students learned Vorthak precision and efficiency, while alien students discovered human creativity and adaptability. The combination produced innovations that exceeded what either species had achieved independently. Dr. Nam Soo-young collaborated with Vorthak scientists to develop technologies that incorporated human innovation with alien precision. Their joint research projects produced advances in space travel, defensive systems, and industrial processes that benefited colonies throughout the sector. The galaxy's balance of power shifted permanently as other alien civilizations observed the transformation of Vorthak-human relations. Species that had accepted imperial dominance for millennia began to question whether the old order was as permanent as they had believed. Fleet Admiral Lim Jung-ho served as the first human ambassador to the Vorthak Empire, establishing diplomatic protocols that recognized both species as equals in galactic affairs. His appointment demonstrated human commitment to peaceful cooperation while maintaining the military capabilities that had earned alien respect. Admiral Kethvar found himself commanding mixed fleets where human creativity complemented Vorthak precision. The tactical combinations proved devastatingly effective against pirates and other threats that had previously challenged individual species' capabilities. The humans taught us that understanding war and understanding our opponents are different skills, Kethvar reflected during a joint command briefing. We learned to calculate the mathematics of warfare, but they taught us that warfare itself can change the mathematics. Commander Lee Min-ho, now serving as a tactical advisor to the Integrated Fleet Command, watched mixed squadrons conduct training exercises that incorporated both human unpredictability and Vorthak precision. The combination created tactical approaches that neither species could have developed independently.